Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Center for Healthy Sex monthly webinar from Mirror of Intimacy, Daily Reflections on Emotional and Erotic Intelligence. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katehakis, and today is Monday, May 4th. And while today is Monday, May 4th, I'm going to talk to you about the entry yesterday from Sunday, May 3rd, music, because we've already talked about the May 4th entry today, which I believe was dignity. And I chose this question of music because I think it would be enormously helpful during this time of sheltering at home and some of the isolation that people are feeling. So I want to remind you that our intake counselors are standing by at 310-843-9902. You can always find our website at centerforhealthysex.com. And if you'll notice the chat box, if you have a question that you want to ask, excuse me, anonymously, you can write to Melisa at centerforhealthysex.com, and her address is in the chat box. So Beethoven said music is the mediator between the spiritual and the sensual life. And I think that's a beautiful statement because oftentimes we don't think about sensuality when we think of spirituality. But when I think of spirituality, I think of the sensuousness of the earth, the beauty and the absolute gorgeousness of the five senses. So really being able to take in a landscape fully, to be fully present with whether it's the ocean or the hills or the mountains or the streams, and to fill up your senses with that experience. And music is found in nature. I was sort of shocked the other morning when I opened my windows and I heard a songbird for quite some time in my backyard. And this is not a normal sound that I hear living really in the middle of a city. Certainly we have birds, but this songbird was going on for quite some time. And I just sat there and listened to the music of the songbird. And I was really transported by something so simple and so beautiful. And typically when we think of songs or love songs, we don't necessarily think about the birds creating love songs, but it felt like a love song to me. It felt like a love song, a lullaby. It was also sort of delightful and joy-inspiring. But love songs touch our lives in many different ways. I mean, most of us will hear a love song and it touches our history. We remember a lover with fondness or with pain, a time when that song was, quote, our song. And we remember that person. I think even over time when the relationship didn't end well or it just wasn't meant to be, we remember that person fondly because we remember that song as a particular time in our lives, a time where we were maybe younger or more impetuous, or there's a wistfulness to it and a longing in some ways to go back to what once was. And so we feel our histories in these various songs. And curiously, most songs have some sort of love or sex theme to them as well. And so some ways music might be a form of sex education. It may be a form of sentiment and memories. And I sometimes listen to songs and remember the songs that my parents listened to. And so it takes me back to my childhood or a time when I remember them in their youth. So songs can evoke all sorts of signs of love or unrequited love or sentiment, love for the past, and for people that are no longer in our lives. And there are times when words really don't do it for us, that we need a different form of expression. And music is a fully integrated form of expression, especially when there are lyrics, because it appeals to the left brain and the right brain. There are studies that show the entire brain, both brains, being activated when listening to music because of how rich it is and how there's language, there's speech, There's also a visceral experience that moves the body. And so music is a full brain experience, a full body experience. That's why it's very difficult to sit and listen to great music and not move, whether you're tapping your foot or moving your body in your chair or using your hands to conduct an orchestra. The music is moving us, and we've heard that phrase time and again also, just let the music move you. And music sort of mimics general patterns of sounds and expression in the body also. So music can evoke guttural sounds of pleasure. It can evoke sounds of satisfaction, like cooing, the way mothers coo to their children when they're listening to music also. And so it can bring out all sorts of patterns in terms of the human expression and bodily based expression also. And there's a beautiful poem called The Morning Bride that says, music has charms to soothe the savage beast. And we've all heard that phrase before also. So think about all the ways that music moves you in your life. And this is a time of great despair for many people, for isolation for others. There have been music jams online. There have been DJs that are hosting parties every week so that you can dance to the music with a whole group of other people dancing also. This may be a good time to turn off the news and to just let yourself listen to music. Listen to old music. Listen to music that makes you happy. Listen to music you haven't listened to in a long time, or music that is an expression of your rage or anger. But use music as a way to express yourself and move the energy out of the body. There's a whole field of music therapy where people do dance therapy or music therapy, where you play instruments and evoke affect or feelings that you might not otherwise get to. So don't be shy, especially if you live alone. Um, and musicians know this better than anyone does about how music is sort of born out of them. Music becomes an expression of them. And many musicians will tell you that, that they're just a channel or a vehicle for the music. Other times, musicians that are in bands together will tell you that there's a language of music. There's a riff that takes place between musicians that's spontaneous, that's nonverbal, that's a knowing, an implicit knowing between the musicians that has them reaching higher heights or experiences that they couldn't have possibly rehearsed because they're just going with the flow of the music. And when you start to have this experience where you are uninhibited, where you're spontaneous with music, then you can start to apply that to your sexual and romantic relationships also. So how many times have you had a conversation with a partner about your love of music, or what kind of music you like and why? And if you really like music, you know that you like all different sorts of music. It doesn't mean that you're just restricted to one genre of music. And I always think it's funny when people say they hate a certain kind of music. That's like saying you hate a certain kind of art. And certainly art is evocative. We see art that just makes us swoon internally, that we think is just the most beautiful thing in the world. And other art that makes us cry, or art that we hate, or art that we think is ugly, or that we did in the third grade. All of our judgments are evoked with art. And likewise with music. And so ask yourself, why don't I like that particular piece of music? What does it do to me that makes me feel edgy or itchy or angry or gives me a headache or feels sappy? And think about the musicians who made that music and how much talent it takes to create that piece of music, even though it may not be your cup of tea or my cup of tea. And see if you can start to be more elastic in your embracing of music. And your judgment of yourself, if you like the music, even though it may be sort of poppy or silly, but it still makes you smile in spite of your judgment of it. So pay attention to music as you listen to it today, and about the conversations you have with people about what kind of music everyone does and doesn't like. And so we know that music can be a medicinal cure. It can really reveal to us the tempos we like. It can inspire us to move, whether it's to take it slow or speed things up. And if you use music during sex, you'll see that music sets the stage for the type of sex you're going to have. If you set the stage with slow, sensuous, melodic music, you may never really get to intercourse. It may be a sense of sensuality, of touch, of gazing into one another's eyes, of feeling each other's skin and hair, and connecting your hearts in a way that you might not otherwise if you're in this nonverbal dance. And so see what happens when you play extremely slow music, maybe music without lyrics, or music even from another culture that neither you or your partner can lay a concept on top of as good or bad. It's just curious, or it moves you, but you don't understand the music itself. And someone says, in your meditation, you say the right music can be a medicinal cure or therapeutic tool. And I wanted to ask how you heard of the dementia Alzheimer's studies that were playing the patient's favorite music as a young person momentarily brings the patient back to the present. It's really beautiful. Actually, I have not heard that, but it's not surprising because long-term memory is the memory that stays intact as we age. And short-term memory very quickly starts to disappear. Even if people don't have Alzheimer's, I mean, certainly if they have senile dementia, and if you've ever been with anybody who's dying, who's elderly, they start to tell stories of their youth. They tell stories about their parents and what it was like growing up, and their early years as a young person. They don't necessarily know what's going on in the present moment, or they can't hold on to it. But music is extremely evocative of the past because those memories are deeply consolidated, and music is embodied. It's an embodied language that we feel and know without necessarily the language of. So thank you for sharing that. I've not seen that study, but I'm sure it's probably readily available online to those of us that do want to take a look at it. Someone says, my mother can remember many songs from the past and play them on the piano, but can't remember what day it is. And that's a beautiful example of that. And how lovely that she has that linkage to the past and that way of soothing herself in the present moment with the linkage to the past. But the present becomes less interesting. And I'm sort of fascinated by this because all of our meditation practices and our mindfulness practices are encouraging us to be disinterested in the story of who I am and what I did yesterday and what I own and what my profession is and the story that we tell about ourselves. It encourages us to be in the present moment, to notice the music of the wind, the song of the bird, the music of the sunshine, and the way it glitters and tinkles, if you will, on the sea. And even though we're not being encouraged to give up our short-term memory or our present memory, it does point us away from that and into this pure present awareness and state of quiet being. And that seems to be naturally what happens as we're aged. In some ways, we're sort of spared the responsibility and the drama and the, really, I would go as far as say, as the nonsense of the day-to-day story that we hear on the news and all of the clownish and ridiculous goings on. And I think one of the things this time of quietude and isolation has done for me is that it's reminded me to stay away from the noise of the media, all of the noise that's going on all of the time, because we become what we put our attention on. And if we start to put our attention on ourselves, on our meditation, on the practice of listening to music, wherever you hear music, on this practice of self-love and self-acceptance, then all of a sudden we have a very different experience of this world. We're not bound by the rage that we see on TV. And I have to say, a lot of it feels pornographic to me in that it is disembodied, disinterested in our humanity. It's all about, evoking rage and fear. So I would even go so far as to say that some of the news out there is really sort of rage porn. And so we're captivated by it and we want to see more of it. And it's so egregious and, just disgusting and inappropriate on so many levels that we can't help but not look at it. So turning it off is the best thing to do. And we're going to be back in our jobs again soon. We're going to be out in the world again soon. All the pressures and responsibilities of a different kind will be back. So why not cherish what remaining days you have to get deeply quiet and even listen to the music of your own brain? And there is a therapeutic modality that's sort of, it's not hugely popular, called brain music, where the practitioner actually puts electrodes on your head and they record the sound of your brain, and then you're given an MP3 file so that you can listen to the sound of your own brain when you go to sleep at night. And it helps people with anxiety and depression. So you can also do this by just being quiet with the sound of your own brain, with the music in your own head. Someone says, some of my most powerful experiences with music happen when I play songs that give permission for deep pain to surface. Yes. Pain born of regret and just missing opportunities where I could not at the time show up with presence. These musical experiences feel like deep purges. And I would say that's really beautiful, because what these deep experiences do, I mean, music is evocative of affect. It's evocative of our implicit memories, not our explicit ones that we are stored in the body, but that we don't necessarily remember or that we can't bring to the surface. And when the music activates that, it allows us to move something through us that we couldn't otherwise move. I had a client a long time ago who told me whenever he needed a good cry, he watched the movie Field of Dreams. And there was a particular scene in that, or particular music in that, that allowed him to connect with some deep-seated loss. So when you can honor the power of music like that and know yourself too, and not be ashamed of that, just know that certain music makes you want to dance, certain music makes you want to laugh, certain music makes you want to roll your eyes because it's corny, certain music has you sobbing deeply because it's helping something unresolved move through you. And someone says, what do you think about music that is highly sexualized or their lyrics are degrading to women? The beats and the melody of those songs are so catchy and has some sort of energy that pulls you to them. And yes, that is true. And so you have to decide and be discerning about what you like about that music. I mean, if that music has a very animalistic sort of bass limbic undertone to it, that evokes this animalism, aggression, intense kind of sexuality that we all have in us. If there's a part of you that wants to connect to that, and you can do it in a way that feels shameless, then go for it. But if it's a steady diet, like anything's a steady diet of something, you become sort of myopic. You only start to see things in a certain way and only experience yourself in one way. And I think the path of healthy sexuality, whatever that is a path of a broad spectrum of experiences, a broad brand of being able to have sex in a very simple, sweet, loving way, but also in a raunchy, animalistic, deeply erotic and lustful way, and then everything in between. And so be judicious about what you put your attention on, because whatever you put your attention on, you become. It's very clear that our brains are forged and formed by what we put our attention on. And that goes back to, the news, violent music, eating junk food. I mean, whatever you do to yourself, we're highly adaptable creatures. And I'm constantly saying this because I'm just in awe of how easy we adapt to things. And so what do you want to become? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to, surround yourself by? What do you want your body to feel like? All of this requires choices and a vigilance about how and what we do to ourselves. And it requires great, great discipline so that we're not just sort of scavengers or receptacles for the garbage of popular culture. And given that we live in a consumer culture, we're easily receptacles for that. I mean, it's so hard to get online and look at anything without being bombarded by ads of things that the search engines think I want. And so my attention can go to, oh, that's pretty, or that's attractive, or maybe I should buy that. And then I just become like a Pac-Man. I'm just like consuming things that I don't need. I mean, it turns out none of us need much because we're not going anywhere. I've had very little dry cleaning. I don't really need to buy any clothes because I have all these nice things that I haven't gotten to wear in months because I don't go anywhere except for to my office and home. And so be mindful about what's being thrown at you and what your attention is on. So let's see. I was talking about tempos that can slow down or speed up sex and sexuality. And so this can help people that feel disconnected or inhibited during sex. If you're someone who's generally shy, but you want to be adventurous, you want to try things, maybe you set the stage with low lighting or no lighting and just light a few candles. I mean, a few candles can create quite a bit of brightness in a room. And then you put on music that allows you to contact that inner goddess in you, or inner provocateur, or inner person that's more aggressive than you necessarily feel comfortable with, because you're allowing yourself to move with the rhythm of your body and letting go of the judgment that says that there's something wrong with you or this means something about you. And see if you can play with those rhythms, those sensualities, those experiences without language, without judgment. And make a commitment or an agreement with your lover that you're only going to listen to a soundtrack or two, that you're not going to talk during sex, but you're going to let the music move your body. And one way you can do this is by creating, some sort of musical, arrangements of some sorts, whether it's, let's see, a playlist that you create, or you can go on Spotify, and Spotify has like an unbelievable amount of, options and choices of different genres of music. Or you can look at the genres of music of other people whose work you admire, because they very generously list their playlist there. So you can find all sorts of interesting music without even trying, that you can just play and let those playlists roll during the course of having sex, and see where the music takes you. Be bold, be brave, be adventurous with how the music rolls. And if you need to, ahead of time, you can talk about your musical tastes with your partners, or maybe the two of you can take the opportunity to compromise on your musical tastes. And, this happens all the time where people like different things, and certain things are conducive to having sex and certain things are not. I was listening to some very old music this weekend because it was reminding me of my childhood and my mother who passed away this summer. And namely, I was listening to the music of the Fifth Dimension, the song Age of Aquarius, because we're in the age of Aquarius, or entering the age of Aquarius right now, which is a massive transition time in the understanding of astrology. And I remember hearing that song when I was 13 or 14 years old. My mother was playing it. And in fact, she took me to see the Fifth Dimension at this beautiful hotel in Miami Beach. And I was just struck by the magic of the whole thing because they're talking about the moon being in the seventh house. And it was very sort of astrological and spiritual. And the sound of that time was super groovy, and everybody was wearing mini skirts and velvet and jewels. And it was magical for me. And I still remember that. So I pulled it up on Spotify and was listening to it and singing to it. And it really made me very happy. I spent a few minutes with my mother in that little moment of communion, which I couldn't otherwise do because she's not here anymore. So these are the kind of things that music can bring us. We can connect with the dead, actually, without getting into some sort of seance or otherworldly experiences. When we play music that our parents loved or our grandparents loved, or a lover who's no longer here, we're actually in relationship with them in that moment because it brings a smile to our face, or it makes us cry because we're feeling the grief and loss because we still haven't gotten over the loss of that person. So someone's asking if I'm familiar with Gabrielle's Roth Five Rhythms dance, and I am, absolutely. And says we have the five innate rhythms: flowing, staccato, chaos, lyrical, and stillness. You dance through the wave. It's amazing, a dance meditation, not used in sexual situations, but can have the application. And I have danced the five rhythms at workshops at Esalen, where you can take weekend workshops or week-long workshops, not just in Gabrielle Roth's system, but in other systems of ecstatic dance. And I would highly recommend, if you're into music, that you do take a workshop like that, because a week-long workshop of ecstatic dancing is extraordinary. It's indescribable, really. It's like a prayer, an active, moving prayer of the body. So you're getting exercise, you're communing with other people. The dance is for you and your own practice. And you're opening up channels of aliveness in the body because we move our cerebral spinal fluid in very specific ways. And these are sensual and sexual waves. And the dance is not about having sex with anyone, but you're having sex with everyone. You're having sex with the universe. If we think of sex as an intercourse and an interpenetration of the other and of the universe. And of course, if you're at Esalen, you're up on the cliffs overlooking the ocean and the gorgeous land there. And so you can't help but fall in love with love itself. So this is a wonderful way to experience dance. And of course, you don't just have to go there. If you Google Five Rhythms Dance or any number of dance workshops, I'm sure you'll find them around the country. My guess is you can do dance online right now through these teleplatforms if you want to join a dance group today, even. So check it out online and see what you come up with. So as I was saying, that when you step inside another's world, you experience this symphonic spell, if you will. And it's a spell where two become one, and two create a third also. There's a third that emerges in a group dance in the ways that I've been talking about, whether it's just with two or it's with a group of 15. There is a third energy that starts to emerge. And it can be sexy to experiment by selecting different types of music with rhythmic sounds. And intimacy in which you aspire to, and again, discovering parts of yourself that you didn't know were there. Mostly, I would say that the act of music and dance ignites a sense of play. And play is a crucial aspect to sex and sexuality, laughter, having fun, having it be a joyous and free experience, not just this sort of disconnected experience. And when two hearts connect in consort, when two hearts connect through music, and through the dance of sexuality, then you have a deeply erotic and spiritual experience. So, are there any other questions about this particular topic? So, one of the things I would recommend is that you start to select music for romantic moods, relational goals, even for your workout. Find songs that move you, and look for qualities of amorous interaction that you would like to have, whether it's a feeling tone or a mood. And ask yourself, is this music positive? Does this music move me in the direction I want to be moved in? Or am I just listening to it because it's what just, came on? And pick and choose the music that you listen to. Share it with people that you love, because that's one of the other beautiful things about music, is that we can share experiences without necessarily having to talk about them, because songwriters are incredibly talented people, as are the people that sing the songs and put them together, and they're sharing their hearts and souls with us also, so why not pass it on? And if every night this week you could find time to listen to at least one of your favorite musical selections, whether you're just enjoying it by yourself or with a lover, what would that music be? How would you challenge yourself to create the kind of playlists that you want for your sex life, your love life, your romantic life, your waking life, your commuting life once you're back to doing that again? Um, and pay attention to the sensations in your body, and how this brings you inner harmony, or a feeling of happiness. So if there are no other questions, I don't have a whole lot more to say about this topic of music. And I hope that you will listen to the music all around you every minute of the day, especially when you're outside in nature now, and you can actually hear the music because there's so much less traffic and so much less noise that human beings are making right now. Listen to Mother Nature, listen to the music in your own head and in your own heart, and pass that along to all of those that you meet. So for now, I hope you have a beautiful rest of the month of May, as we've celebrated mothers yesterday and Mother Nature, and that you allow yourself to stretch out with the kind of music that you want to make, that you are the embodiment of music also. So when you dance, you are music in action also, your love in action. So have fun with the way that you move through the music during this month of May, and as we welcome in the spring. So take good care, and I look forward to seeing all of you in June. Namaste.